Bright and Early, First Thing, a prequel to the serial by Tim Campbell. Elizabeth Bright and Georgia Josephine Early met at UCLA when they were both incoming freshmen. That meeting created a lifelong partnership. After college graduation in 1947, they both trained as police officers with the LAPD, later becoming detectives. In 1952, a rule change led to their leaving the police department and opening the Bright and Early Investigations and Security Agency in North Hollywood. While they did find it necessary to do unglamorous jobs like chasing deadbeat husbands, they were destined to have a major impact on many other personal crimes that run the gambit from fraud to murder. Join these ladies for some hair-raising investigations, the likes of which would make Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson eager to join their team. I'm going to share the story with you, so if you have a curious bone in your body, or for that matter, if you possess the same nosy gene that affects about 3/4 of the world's population, then read on. My name is Elizabeth Delaney Bright, and my father was a first-generation natural U.S. citizen born in Sacramento, California. His parents were Lavinia and Joseph Klaus Phaedros, who migrated from Greece in 1894 after Joseph's family disowned him for marrying a Romani, gypsy. My dad, John Knight Bright, started his first job as a security watchman at University Farm Extension of UC Berkeley, where he met my mother, then a student in agriculture. She later moved to graduate school at UCLA with Dad following right behind. It was then that they decided to get married, and in just a few short years, I came along. When I was just a kid, about 5 or 6 years old, I became a huge fan of Nancy Drew, and the books by Carolyn Keene were what I wanted read to me at bedtime every night. And when I could read for myself, I read every one of those books. I became a regular at the library near our house, and on each trip there I would check out at least one of the Nancy Drew mysteries. By the time I was in 5th grade, I had read every title the library had, and some more than once. So when Mrs. Musselman asked the class to write a brief paper on what we wanted to be when we grew up, it was easy for me to decide. My paper was about my plan to become a police detective when I was an adult. I got an A on that paper, and Mrs. Musselman wrote a note on it when she returned the paper, wishing me good luck and asking me to let her know when it happened. When I graduated from UCLA, Mrs. Musselman was one lady I invited to the ceremony. Now, just over 5 years later, our story starts anew. Lizzie's blue eyes were caught by the photograph. It brought back so many innocent memories of a day when times were simpler. This had been a day she'd not ever expected in her wildest imaginings. Still, there it was, with photo documentation as evidence. The LAPD had been a hotbed of negativity for so many years, and then finally, after the whole Christmas nightmare last winter, the new chief had gotten his way. 1952 had started out to be the year when opportunities would abound for college-educated police officers, particularly the non-traditional ones. Of course, women in uniform who were carrying badges and guns had long been the norm for the department, but having a young woman, or two for that matter, with college degrees on the force was obviously good politics, and then for those 2 women after only 5 years in uniform to be promoted was almost unheard of. Lizzie Bright and her partner, Georgia Early, having been given the opportunity to become detectives 2 years earlier, was new even to the first department in the country with genuine women police officers and even women of color. George, as she preferred to be known, and Lizzie had met and become best friends at UCLA when they both ran track and played volleyball as Bruins. That friendship had resulted in a bond stronger than concrete. They had joined the LAPD together and attended the academy as classmates, graduating in early fall of 1947. Added to that momentous occasion, they had finally decided that they were meant for each other, making a personal commitment that they perceived as no different from marriage vows. Life was more than good. They were cosmically aligned and willing to declare their undying love for each other. Then, on the 20th of January, they'd been notified that not only had they both passed the detective's exam, but they'd also made the selection list as well. On February 1st, they'd been awarded their investigators' badges in a department-wide ceremony. Life was perfect. Until July 1st. Isn't there one of those Murphy's Law things that said if everything is going perfectly, then something was going to happen to trash it all? New regulations were implemented on that later date that left the ladies with an insurmountable dilemma. Since they were in what could only be called a familiar relationship, they could no longer serve together. Once the situation came to the attention of their division commander, they were informed that one of them would have to either be transferred to another division, leave the department, or the two would be required to sever their relationship. We had a face-to-face with our morning coffee. "Look, Lizzie, I can take a transfer and you can stay here. It's no big deal, you know." "But George, this is the only division that had any detective openings. If you go somewhere else, you may have to take a demotion. And with your background, you've the better chance of rising through the ranks here than I do." "Do you mean because I'm half black or because I'm the bastard child of a district court judge?" "What? Oh, that's right. I haven't told you about the sordid details in all these years, have I? You see, my mom was the housekeeper for a district court judge. They bumped uglies for a couple of years, and you guessed it, I came along. That's how I got into UCLA, I'm sure, and certainly it's how I paid for it. The judge was an alum of UCLA and UCLA law, so he used his influence and his money. Not to mention giving me this pale skin and these blue-gray eyes." This last comment was delivered with a grin because I always tell her how beautiful her eyes are. It was one of the first things I noticed about her all those years ago when we first met in school. And it was obvious that she was half and half, mixed race. She just never specifically mentioned the donors of those characteristics. Of course, I knew her mom was black and a domestic. I'd met her mom during our first year at UCLA. "No, that's not what I meant, but why should you be the one to transfer? I could do it." "I'm flattered that you would give up something for me that you've wanted since the very first day on the job. I love you too. Still, when I really think about it, why should either of us have to go somewhere else? Need I point out the regulations? That's why we have to do something." "But there are other options." My heart fell to my stomach. George has always been a pretty tough guy, and I was so afraid that she would say we should part company. What are you saying? You're not saying that we—" I feared that if I said it aloud, it would come true, so I just stopped talking. Besides being upfront and often blunt, one of George's true talents is her ability to see minute facial and expression changes. Instantly, she put her arms around her partner, pulling me against her, a hand going to the back of my head, stroking gently. "Oh, sweetie, you know I'd never leave you, don't you? No, I meant we could both leave the department. I remember reading a paper you did while we were at UCLA about owning your own security firm. We could do that, you know." I turned my face to look squarely at her. She didn't seem to be kidding. But then again, she had that control wherein she could tell a pop-eyed lie of mega proportions and still have a perfectly straight face. "Are you serious? Where would we get the money to do something like that, let alone the money to live on until we had any income?" I expected her to hesitate after that very rational idea had been offered, but no, she didn't even miss a beat. "It just so happens that the timing is almost perfect. We joined the force on July 15th, 1947. In 6 days, the 5th anniversary of that will be here. We each have a retirement fund, and we both invested the max, and it was matched by the city, and at 5 years, we're fully vested. So we not only get our own money back, but the matching funds and all the earnings on the entire account. The report we got in January showed that at the end of last year, I had just over $3,400, and we each add almost $33 every month this year, and that's matched, and there's money being earned. We'll have close to $4,000 in our account, and we each have one. That's $8,000. It's a fortune. Plus, we can drag our feet or even tell them we'll take a transfer to make it take longer, and we can work on a couple of clients before we leave." Have you considered that we each take home $316 each month? And it's not like we have a lot left over each month. I do put about $10 or $12 in my savings account each month, and that can stop. And we drive a police car on city gas here, and we're going to be out of pocket using our own cars. We're going to need at least $500 each month to cover everything we're doing now, like rent and groceries. Plus, we buy nothing that we absolutely don't need to have until we get on our feet. If we have, let's say, $8,000 from retirement, and do we know how long it will take to get that money? I mean, it's exciting and scary at the same time. We need to figure out a budget for what it will take to run the business for at least the first year and our own expenses to make sure it's even possible first, right? Okay, that's your bailiwick, so you do that part, but we start working on it right away, okay? I was getting excited already, and yet I was scared nearly to death, since I was seeing this as a possible solution, even though, deep down, I feared it was a flop completely. What did either of us know about running a business? Come on, Lizzie, I can see that doubt in your eyes. We can do this, and you know it. We just have to agree that we don't follow around deadbeat husbands who are cheating on their wives so we can catch them in the act and photograph it. Agreed? Agreed. I don't want to do that either. Okay, just for grins, let's put together a plan so we can evaluate it and decide if it can be done, and then if we can do it, and then how we'll do it. We spent the next 2 weeks trying to avoid the captain. Finally, he caught us in the break room getting coffee after our morning staff briefing. Somehow, we had managed to make it almost completely through July without agreeing to a solution. So, ladies, what's it going to be? I need to report to the division chief this afternoon at 2. I know that's the first question he's going to raise. Tell me, please, what have you two decided? I was about to respond when I heard George's voice. Captain, if I take a transfer, where would I go? I want to still be a detective. Besides, it was the chief's idea to promote 2 women as a political stunt. Well, now it seems like demoting me would kind of fly in the face of progress. Ask him where I can go and keep my position, and let me know, and I'll give you my answer then, okay? The captain's only reply was an affirmative nod of his head. But after he left the break room, George pointed out the positive. That should keep them busy for a few more days. We have work to do today, Lizzie. The car we were assigned was a year-old Ford sedan, typical black unmarked that screamed cop car. If they'd only spent about $6 more and put white walls on it like every other Ford sedan in L.A. County, but no way they were going to waste the taxpayers' money on frills, even if it helped us sneak up on criminals. We pulled out of the lot, and instead of turning right toward downtown, George took a left toward North Hollywood. You mean we're not going downtown? In the briefing, you said that we had a snitch who might be able to give us some info on that robbery last night. Yep, but we don't have a snitch who knows anything about that robbery. That gives us some time to meet someone, and it just so happens that he has the perfect office space for us, and it's on Lancashire, upstairs over a bank. We're going up there to see it. After about 20 minutes, George turned off Lancashire onto Weddington Street. On the immediate right was the First Federal Bank of California. She stopped the car at the curb right at the back corner of the building. There was a door into the bank there, which I initially thought to be a service entrance, until I recognized the guy standing on the sidewalk apparently waiting for us. You remember that guy? He was in our urban culture class. His name is Stephen Cowell. He's a realtor now, and I talked with him yesterday. It only took a few minutes. We entered what I had thought was a service door and climbed up to the second floor. Immediately, at the top on the left, there was an office with 2 windows overlooking the empty lot next to the bank. There were 2 doors off the back wall, which led to 2 smaller rooms. The rent was perfect, since it lacked a number of luxuries. There was no restroom other than the one down the hall we'd entered from. That was shared with the bank, who also had offices on the front of the second floor. Stephen told us that we could also use the main entrance to the bank, which meant sharing an elevator. But our clients would at least be able to avoid the back stairs. Once back in the car, I realized, with an almost sickening impact, that we had just started our own business. The office space would officially be ours beginning August 1st. The most amazing part of the whole process was that I'd budgeted $150 per month, and this place was only $120 for almost 500 square feet. Now we'd need furniture and a telephone and business cards, and the list goes on. After the initial wave of nausea passed, though, I became excited at the prospect. So, Georgia Joe, what are we going to call this business of ours? You're kidding, right? We're going to call it Bright and Early Investigations and Security. We have these incredible names, so we must use them. And so it was that our firm, such that it is, was born. Over the intervening dozen or so days, we managed to have a phone put in at the office. Our number is HO for Hollywood, 2929. George found 2 old but decent desks at a used furniture store, along with several chairs, a work table, and, most importantly, a percolator for those early mornings or late evenings. I had made one incredible find to add to this. I was running on Lancashire one morning and passed an eye doctor's office that was being renovated. What caught my eye, pun intended, was his old sign that said, "For all your eye needs, see us." And in the middle of the old sign was a red and white eye that covered about the middle third of the 2 by 4 foot black metal. When I asked, one of the workers told me that I could have it, since it was going into the trash anyway. I couldn't control the excitement when I got back to the office. It was nearly time to think about heading to the precinct office for a regular workday. "Look, George, I have the perfect piece of art for our reception area. It's a private eye." George cracked up when she saw the old sign. "You do know that we're going to have to paint over the doctor's name before we hang it, right? In fact, we should also paint over the I and replace it with just an I, as the one in P.I. No, the I is the pun version of the I in P.I. Oh, so punny is what you're looking for? Okay, then I can see how you got there. While I'm thinking about it, there were 2 Mexican guys with a pickup truck at the furniture store. I figured they were looking for work, and I asked them if they would mind delivering some stuff to our office. Like always, if you want something done, just find a couple of these guys and your worries are over. They're honest, hardworking, and most importantly, inexpensive. Since tomorrow is Saturday, they agreed to pick up the stuff and bring it here. They took one quick look around their still empty office before leaving for the real jobs, at least for now. But not much longer. And so it began. 2 gay girls in a man's world sort of business in the 2nd largest city in the country in 1952. Now the fear of our competing with men in their own realm might have the slightest bit of truth.